So I can't think of anything worse than jumping on an airplane and landing somewhere completely remote that's potentially dangerous, and I have to walk around and deal with crazy creatures and random food with nowhere proper to go to the toilet. It just sounds like a nightmare to me, but for some people that's quite exciting. I was not born with the explorer gene, but I am very fascinated with people who do have that drive and that hunger and that passion of traveling to remote places. Levison Wood is a writer, explorer, and photographer. He has traveled to some insane places and he's written books about them and done documentaries. I really recommend you guys read Walking the Nile, Walking the Himalayas, and Walking the Americas. I really enjoyed reading Walking the Niles. I think he's a really interesting person and he has that explorer gene that obviously I wasn't born with. So today I'm going to be talking to him about some of the craziest places he's been to, the weird food that he's eaten, and why he's so obsessed with walking. Introduce yourself as an explorer, like, hi, I'm an, because to me it's such an adventurous, like, romantic notion to be an explorer. So how do you define?
I find it's a tough one. I mean, I don't put explorer on my business card. I call myself a writer, you know, because that's ultimately what I spend my time doing. It's usually writing. So in the simplest terms, it's coming back with the stories, but. You know, there is an element of exploration, genuine exploration. You know, it's difficult to say, you know, what's exploration in the 21st century. You know, it's surely everything's mapped on, you know, online. You know, you can zoom in on Google Earth and see that what's going on. But whilst that's true, there are vast parts of the world that people haven't been to, or at least haven't been to in a very long time. And even in somewhere like Mexico, where I walked across last year, we were basically discovering pyramids that nobody had excavated before. Just in the middle of the jungle, found ourselves walking uphill, which was strange because there's no hills in that part of Mexico. And we realized we're going up an unexplored pyramid in the middle of the jungle, and we measured the height, and it was higher than Chichen Itza, which is the most famous pyramid in that part of Mexico. And we're like, wow, this is nuts. Incredible. Likewise, you know, I was in Iraq, you know, a few weeks ago, and going to Eridu, you know, the oldest city in the world, and no one there. Babylon, no tourists, and maybe, you know, obviously we're not the first people to sort of necessarily find some of these places, but the point is, it's documenting those places and sharing those stories with people that wouldn't have heard of them before, I think is really important. And that's what exploration really is in the modern world. It's taking those stories home and showing them to people that aren't going to see them themselves.
Yeah. And how does it feel, especially for example in the Nile trip, when you come to the end, when you're done? Are you exhilarated, exhausted? Are you like, oh, finally this is over? Or are you kind of elated, let's do that again? Like, what is that feeling?
It's usually relief that it's over to start with. I think when you do anything for more than 3 or 4 months, the monotony does set in. I mean, when I look back and think, wow, actually, no, that was pretty cool. But when you're doing it every day, it's tough to maintain that level of motivation, so that when you do finally come to the end, it's generally you just want to like relax, go home, have a cup of tea and just chill out. But then it doesn't take long to get back into it. Yeah, so no, it's a combination. It's you know, I try not to get too I try not to take it too seriously, because actually I think it's really important to just like, at the end of the day, it was just a really long walk, you know? But at the same time it was pretty cool. So no, I enjoy it, and when I get to the end of a journey, you know, I feel, yeah, that was good. And
is there a time that you remember where you were like in the middle of a journey and you were like, you know what, I just want to be at home on the sofa eating ice cream, watching a Christmas movie, where you're like, I've just had enough?
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time, but I don't think I'd ever really trade it in. I mean, I remember on the Nile, I did spend Christmas one day. It was Christmas Day, 2013. I was there with, it was myself, my guide, and my friend had joined me, and the three of us, we basically had no food left, so we employed a couple of local Tanzanian porters to come with us, with a goat, and we camped at the side of this river. It was full of mosquitoes, crocodiles, thoroughly unpleasant, and we're like, it's Christmas Day, what on earth are we doing? Yeah. We've got this poor goat that we're going to have to slaughter to eat. Oh. And the two porters that we that were coming with us, they were not very friendly guys, and luckily Boston, my guide, he spoke Swahili, so he could understand them, and he overheard them. They were saying that if we didn't share the goat with them for lunch, they were going to basically tie us to a tree and rob us and leave us there. So it's times like that where you think, really, is this what I want to be doing?
Is this what it's come down to?
Yeah.
So two issues, when it comes to your journey, there's two obstacles that come to my mind. The first is the enforcement or the laws or the governments in these places you're going. The second is the natural, the creatures that you have to come across. So I'm wondering, what is more challenging or dangerous or scary for you to deal with, the enforcement or the wild animals?
Well, animals tend to be at least predictable. If you're dealing with crocodiles in a river, for example, they're creatures of habit. They've got a very small brain, so that that if you're going to go and fill up your water bottle, or if you're going to go and bathe, don't go to the obvious watering hole where the antelope go, right? Because you're going to get eaten. Go to three or 4 meters to the other side, stand on a rock, and you'll be fine.
I think that's common sense to you, but for someone like me, I'd probably just see water and just jump right in.
Yeah, but you learn that from experience. When you've been snapped at by crocodiles, don't go to the obvious place.
Yeah.
So at least you can predict them. You know what to do. When you've experienced, what happens if a lion is chasing after you, you know what to do, or hippo, or rhino, or elephant. Whereas people are a lot more complicated, especially if they've got guns and are drunk, which happens in a lot of places, right? So you have to be much more careful around people. Having said that, having been in the army and having been in situations surrounded by lots of men with guns, it's not automatically terrifying, or not as terrifying as you might think, because you can relate to people wherever you go.
Yeah.
And as long as you get on side with people, and I've been threatened, with execution before, and I've had people with an AK-47 in the back of my head, but it's little things like humanizing yourself and talking to somebody on their own level. And I've found, it's quite ironic, but carrying a packet of cigarettes, because if you get somebody who's got a gun to your head and they're angry, you need to break the ice. You need to humanize yourself, because if you look away and just act terrified, they'll just look at you as a piece of meat. It's far better to offer them a cigarette, get talking to them, build a rapport, and they're far less likely to shoot you.
I just thought that worked in prison, having a cigarette.
Same thing. So you've got to. It's little things like that you learn along the way that become quite useful. So for me, the biggest fear is it's not what you'd expect. It's getting in cars, because there's a lot of places that I travel to where road safety isn't necessarily the most prioritised issue, and especially in the mountains, when you've got these gravel roads, sheer drops. I was in Nepal a couple of years ago when we got in a taxi, and going over a mountain pass at night time, the brakes failed in the car, and the car went straight off the edge of a cliff, 150 metre drop. Very lucky to survive. My arm was broken, a few ribs.
Is that when you had to get stents in your arm?
Yeah. So I've got a pretty nasty scar that goes all the way up now. But
is that probably the worst accident or the worst injury you've had from?
Yeah, that was terrifying. The car rolled 10 times. Very lucky to survive. Yeah.
Do you think after each one of these journeys you learn something new about yourself, or do you pretty much know yourself now?
No, it's always a learning experience, and I think the more you learn, if that makes sense. I'm a big advocate of trying to understand yourself, and with each trip I learn something new, and things that I never even thought that I'd know or want to know. I think, especially spending time last year in Central America, I thought this is a slightly easier trip. In Central America, it's quite pleasant. There's beaches, there's palm trees. It's not going to be as challenging as the Nile. But I was forced to realise a lot of things there. When you're in the jungle, when you travel in somewhere like India, you think you're going to find spirituality. It's the colours, that history, the spirituality is ingrained in the culture. Central America, I kind of wasn't expecting that, but actually there's a lot of shamanism, which isn't something I'd ever related to before, but I found fascinating as something to learn more about. And I think that for me, what it's what these journeys are really good for is learning about other people's cultures and seeing what unites people, what brings people together, the similarities between, people in Guatemala and people in this part of the world, or people in the Himalayas, or people in Africa. And actually, for the most part, people are very similar around the world, and actually, cultures, religions, ultimately, they all say the same message.
Yeah. Can you, I know we've talked about this before, but can we just for the camera talk about the current project you're working on? You're going around the Arabian Peninsula, right?
Yes, I've always been fascinated by the culture here, by the links with the various cultures and communities that live across the peninsula. And so, I thought, why not actually go around the edge of Arabia? And I started a few weeks ago up in northeastern Syria. I've traversed all of Iraq, and now I'm traveling around the Gulf. And hopefully we'll continue through Oman across the empty quarter desert.
That would be crazy, the empty quarter desert.
Which I'm really looking forward to. So I've got the camels planned in advance, so hopefully they'll turn up.
Yeah.
It's a really fascinating journey so far. The diversity though is really what draws me.
You mean diversity with people, with cultures, with food,
everything.
with weather?
Yeah, the culture, the food, the people. The weather, I started it's very hot here at the moment, but by the time I get to Lebanon, in the winter, it's going to be pretty chilly. So, and that, people back home, for me, I don't think they're going to realise that you get all sorts of environments here. The rainy season down in Dhofar and in Maan, the fact you can go skiing in Lebanon or indeed in northeastern Iraq. There's a lot of diversity, and the cultures of the different people. I was spending a few days with the Marsh Arabs, the Madan in Iraq. It's an absolutely fascinating culture. So I really enjoy exploring the communities of people, and for me that's what it's about. It's about the people that you meet along the way.
It's really interesting that you talk about the Marsh People. I just read a book that I found in a secondhand bookstore by some explorer, British explorer, who went there in
Wilfred Thesiger?
Huh?
Wilfred Thesiger?
I can't remember his name. It's called the Marsh People of Iraq.
Yeah,
is that the same book?
Wilfred Thesiger.
Yeah, and I found it so interesting because I told you I'm from Iraq, but I don't know much about these people and those Marsh People. So when you were talking about that just before, I remembered the book.
Yeah, it's a civilization that has pretty much remained unchanged since the Sumerians, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. And they still live in reed huts, they've still got the little boats, and they've still got the water buffaloes that they keep, and that's it. It's a very simple life. But what's remarkable is that when it was all destroyed back in the 90s by Saddam Hussein, they drained the marshes, and all of the people fled. They went to the cities, a lot of them went to become agricultural workers in Baghdad. And then in 2003 onwards, the marshes have slowly come back, and the people have come back. And it's amazing to think that they went to live in the cities. Why would they go and live in a swamp? But it goes to show the dedication of culture that really remains. And people did go back and wanted to go and live that traditional lifestyle. And for me, that's fascinating. Why people would want to do that, because it's a hard life, but they do.
Other than the Arabian Peninsula, I'm interested to know what has been a place you've been to that you were quite surprised about. You didn't expect it to be how it was, and you think people generally would be quite surprised about.
Probably Sudan, actually. The Sudan, I kind of went there. Before I went, I was a bit reluctant, I was a bit hesitant. I thought it's going to be, on the news you hear about the sort of the negative side. You hear about the poverty, the famine, you hear about civil war and all the negativity. I got there, some of the friendliest people I've ever encountered. The hospitality was overwhelming. Everywhere I went, I don't think I spent any money in the whole country. People were coming out and giving me food, insisting you stay with them. It was just an overwhelming, just feeling to be with people like that. And they don't get any tourists, I guess, so that the culture is entirely intact, and absolutely beautiful place as well.
If you could walk to space, would you do it and come back?
Would I walk to space? Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I'd go and explore space as long as I came back. I don't think I want to go and do that Mars mission where it's a one-way journey.
Stay.
No, that's not for me.
Because that's the last frontier, isn't it? Space.
Yeah.
Because technically we've kind of explored most of the Earth.
The space and underwater. There's still a lot of ocean that we just know nothing about. There's so many. They reckon we've only explored 5% of the species in the oceans. Isn't that amazing? You know, there's a lot of weird fish out there.
Yeah, squids, those giant squids I've seen. Where's the worst place you had to use the toilet?
Worst place I had to use the toilet? I mean, it's probably India.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Just like a hole on the ground?
Yeah.
What's the worst thing you had to eat? But I don't feel like you get disgusted by weird food. I feel like you're excited by that.
No, I've had some pretty nasty things. Probably, it's a toss-up between maggot soup and bush rat. Both
And
of
what?
which bush rat. I mean, there's these rats in Uganda that they grow to this big. They're
not even a
they're
rat.
bigger than cats, but they're rats, and they boil them and they taste disgusting.
Tastes disgusting, not like chicken.
Not good.
What about maggot soup?
Maggot soup, that was an accident. Well, actually, it wasn't. It was an accident that I ate it. It wasn't an accident that they were there. They basically let the beans go rotten so that the flies lay their eggs, the maggots grow.
They do that on purpose?
They do that on purpose, and then they boil it so that they get more protein.
Right, as you do, as you would. What do you think is an essential piece of equipment that you have to have with you? Not equipment, even something on you that you can't travel without.
Essential bit of equipment. You know what? A nice, crisp, clean, white linen shirt.
See, I've heard you say that before, and I find that really strange because doesn't the shirt just get dirty?
I think because, I mean, it's like, you know, here we are in Dubai. I mean, I'm not always on a mountain or in the desert, sweating, you know, in the jungle, whatever. You know, there are obviously, when I'm on these long journeys of 6, 8, 9 months, there are towns along the way where you have to look smart. You know, if I turned up today in my rags, you know, stinking, then you probably wouldn't be speaking to me for very long. So, you know, I think it's important to make sure you've got the right equipment for the job, and sometimes that means, you know, packing for every occasion. You know, I met the Dalai Lama in Nepal and India, and so I think a lot of the places that I go to, you tend to get if not arrested, then at least questioned at police checkpoints. And people don't want to negotiate with a real tramp, you know. What
was the Dalai Lama like?
The Dalai Lama was inspirational. I've not met many people with that sense of peace and an aura of real gravity. I mean, very jolly, smiling, always smiling and joking. Very, very humorous man, but with a following of people that truly adore him, because I think he's very, very genuine, and there aren't many people that can command such a following and respect, I would say.
So last question, what would you tell someone like me? I told you before, I'm not a fan of traveling. I don't like being in places I can't really control what's happening around me, but I do feel like there is something that you gain from being in that kind of environment. So how would you convince someone like me who's like, nah, that's not the kind of thing I ever want to do?
Well, for me, I think the beauty of traveling is when you do push yourself out of your comfort zone, you learn so much more about the world, your environment, but also about yourself. So I genuinely feel that my travels have given me so many rich experiences that you know, I should have a few good tales for my grandchildren one day. But I think the most important thing is the people you meet. You know, the journeys, you can be in the most beautiful place in the world, but if you're with people you don't like, then you're not going to have a great memory. Equally, you can be in a complete dump, and if you're with good friends, then you'll have a great time. And so for me, it's about the people that you meet along the way and the friendships that you make by doing these trips. And I've made some great friends around the world, and that's what it's about.
Cool. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I really had so much fun talking to you, even though it was a bit haphazard. What writers do you like?
My favourite writers. I mean, I'm obviously drawn to writers based on exploration. So people like Wilfred Thesiger, Eric Newby, Richard Burton. But I just love all sorts of literature. I mean, anything that takes you and gives you a sense of place, for me, is really important. So, yeah, I find inspiration everywhere. I don't like to stick to one genre.
Have you read T.H. Lawrence's work?
Yes. I mean, he was a student at Nottingham University where I studied.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And Gertrude Bell as well?
Gertrude Bell, Freya Stork, Isabella Bird. You know, there's so many real inspirations that travelled in this region.
I love Gertrude Bell. I think she's amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you go.
Thank you.
You were so amazing. Thanks for all your help. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully I'll see you in March again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good luck on your travels.
No, cheers.
You know any basic Arabic?
Shway shway.
Yeah. That'll get you by.
Exactly.
Thanks so much.
No, thank you.